Hello beautiful party people, it's Light again, and today I show you my lightning arrow build for the upcoming league. Because the bow builds have been buffed many times over the recent patches, they actually became a viable league starter without getting a massive headache. They serve as a great starter because the clear speed is pretty much unmatched and the potential for scaling is really high. I'll show you my character that I played entirely in the solo cell phone league and that took out pretty much all the Uber bosses despite being an SSF bow character. That being said, this is not an SSF guide. Bow builds are at least 1000 times better in a trade environment, and this is just to show that even if you don't have much, or if you can trade, this can be a viable starter that will enable you to get all your void stones and lets you farm a ton of currency for all the other stuff you might want to try. So the Deadeye Ascendancy is focused on clear speed and dealing a ton of damage from a safe distance. In fact, you deal more damage the further you are away from your target, up to about the edge of your screen. Which makes this playstyle incredibly safe for mapping because most monsters don't even appear on your screen. Pair this with the ability to blind enemies, lifesteal, plus a decent amount of damage mitigation through Wind Dancer, Arctic Armor, and the newly buffed evasion gear, and you won't even get hit if a monster gets close to you. Unfortunately, the Far Shot node has been nerfed by 50%, which loses about 30% damage. But in return, we won't need to run Grace anymore because defensive stats on gear are getting buffed, which will enable us to run an extra damage aura, and in this clip my character is actually not running any damage auras, just Grace and Arctic Armor. And to be honest, 60% more damage from a single node was just a bit too much. I swapped to Barrage here to increase my damage a bit, because as I said, this character is from solo self-found and the gear is really nothing special, but nonetheless a really good showcase despite the gear. In this clip, the character has about 10 million DPS. On bosses, you put down your ballistas, activate your buffs, and then you start blasting away at them from a safe distance and melt them without ever being really touched. So let's look at the PoE. I have included many trees so you can follow this step by step up all the way until level 95 without any cluster jewels or jewels in general, because I thought for beginners this might be a bit confusing, and to be honest, the base skill tree is really competitive even with cluster jewels, so this skill tree should serve as a good baseline. So some notable stuff about the skill tree is that it's mostly just damage in the beginning, because if you're playing softcore, you don't really care about life, you just want to get through the story as fast as possible. But in my version, it includes a lot of quality of life stuff that just make leveling and playing the game in general like a lot more fun and smooth and enjoyable. So at level 9, the only damage node that the only thing that's not a damage node that we take is Primal Spirit, because it gives attributes, and we really need this because certain gear and ours require strength and intelligence, and you won't really have any on gear, or at least if you have it on gear, and if you're new, it's gonna be so annoying to swap the gear around. So just take this, gives 43 stats, and you won't have a headache then. And at level 12 we take some more damage. Level 16 we go down here, take more damage again. And then at level 24 we really want to rush to this node, Precise Technique, because this one gives an insane amount of damage for free. And just makes it so that you get 40% more attack damage, but you never crit. But we never crit anyways because we are such a low level and we don't have any crit on our gear anyways. Then make sure to get this wheel, because we need to make sure that our accuracy rating is always higher than our maximum life, or otherwise this node won't activate. So for example, if you have 900 life and 1000 accuracy, then it will work. But as soon as you have 899 accuracy, then this node won't work at all. So we take this wheel, and then we take this mastery, 100 accuracy per green socket on your bow, which is an insane amount early game. And this node is the main reason why bow builds are even viable in the early game, because before we had this, it was a headache, and you didn't do any damage. And you can take this all the way to level 80 or some shit. So, great node. Level 32. What no one else really does, and what only I really do, is take this node, or rather this wheel, Essence Sap. This will enable you to not need any mana flask anymore, because this is just so much mana leech that you can just throw away your mana flask and have infinite mana as long as you're hitting something. Then we turn this way and get Onslaught, so we get through the campaign a bit faster, because then, if you don't know, Onslaught gives you 20% attack, cast, and movement speed. Will greatly increase your clear speed and the time you get through the story. And then down here we take Point Blank. I know I said earlier that this build is about staying as far away as possible, but in the early game it doesn't really matter, and 30% more damage is just way too good to give up early game. So definitely pick this up. I have also included in the texts down here, or rather in the drop downs, I've included when you should do the Labyrinth, and then you can see over here which Ascendancy node I took. Go further. Here I take Fleetfoot, so again we get through the story a bit faster, some more damage. And then at level 60, we can finally swap to Lightning Arrow, because we get this extra projectile, and we have the PS. Whereas before at level 50 we don't have this stuff, and without the 2 extra projectiles and without the PS, Lightning Arrow feels really bad, because it just doesn't have the same mechanics as Rain of Arrows. And then we take out Point Blank and clean up the tree and go around this area, because this is cleaner, and we get the HP, and then we get Far Shot. So Far Shot, because of the nerf of the Far Shot got, it would cancel out Point Blank, so we definitely need to, at least, even if we don't manage to get the HP here, we want to at least clean up the Point Blank, so it doesn't interfere with our Far Shot. So level 70, we get rid of the Mana Leech nodes, because around level 70, we want to have not only Mana Leech, we also want to have Lifesteal, because I am really lazy, and having Lifesteal just feels really nice, because you don't need to press your Mana Flask unless you are like about to get bursted or die. We could pick up some blind here too. Some insane damage nodes. These are probably the best damage nodes you can get, because they increase your damage up to 90% actually. I know it says 30% projectile speed and 60% increased damage. But the 30% projectile speed we convert through this mastery. So increases and reductions to projectiles also apply to damage with bows. So this node alone gives 90% damage, which is crazy. And here at level 80 we can start picking up the crit nodes that we skipped earlier, which are these here. Then this wheel, the top side, and this wheel plus the mastery. And then we can finally unspec Precise Technique. We can still leave this wheel because it's pretty efficient. And then at level 90 we swap around some of the gear, or not the gear, we swap around the tree a bit. We start going around the top side instead of through the projectile damage nodes, and we pick up the mana reservation efficiency. We pick up the mana reservation efficiency down here. We unspec the movement speed nodes, because we will have haste. We get the spell suppression, so spells don't one-shot us, and we get some other quality of life stuff like flask charge gained, reduced flask used. Monsters cannot block, and the Mark Mastery, where the enemies cannot regenerate life. Really good against rare monsters, against essences, or mapping in general, because monsters that regen can be almost unkillable if you have no countermeasure against them. Yeah. And then next, I have included a lot of information in the notes section. Some of general information, there are nodes that you can take. And if you scroll down a bit here, I have included like a whole leveling section that will tell you exactly what gems and support gems you should get at what level and from what quest, all the way until Act 10. And Then I want to talk about some of the configurations I have in my build. So if you look at this so that it makes sense. So the first really notable thing is that down here in the custom modifiers, it says lightning arrow and barrage deal 39% more damage. And that is just simply because the returning projectile gem, it doesn't work in PoE building. So as you can see, the build has currently 9 million DPS. And if I turn this off, it makes a difference of about, what is it, 100k, 60k DPS, which is just from the projectile speed thing, but it doesn't account for the 61% less damage returning projectile, which is, well, the returning projectile does 39% of the attack. So I have just included this in the custom modifiers. And then, as you can see here, it says I have 24 artillery ballistas, even though we can only place 6, and that is because Path of Building only calculates one projectile of one ballista. But the artillery ballista payload, it can actually overlap. And through testing, it has been found out that it's around 3.5 times, so which would be 21. But in my calculation, I made it 24 because it's a nicer number. And I thought it was fair to put it as 24 because I didn't include focus and where is it? Wall haste, because these are like temporary buffs that you won't have all the time in boss fights. Wall haste you will only have like one time per boss fight, but focus you will have every 8 seconds. You get focus from your gloves, which will greatly increase your attack speed. It's a craft from Betrayer, really recommendable. And yeah, so I just thought it would be fair to put 24 instead of 21 because we don't include these buffs in the calculation. So now let's go over the gear. Let's start with the bow. So here I have my bow. What you want on your bow is triple elemental damage. So added fire, added cold, added lightning. In this case, the bow, as I said, nothing special. It has double tier 3 elemental damage, 1 tier 1 elemental damage, and then the last 3 stats are, it might look like insane from like a solo self-found perspective, but the last 3 stats are kind of worthless on the bow because you want local modifiers on the bow. And what I mean with that is, let's say I have the same bow, but it has attack speed and critical strike chance like this one. So the same bow, just it doesn't have crit multi, it doesn't have the extra projectile, and doesn't have the accuracy, and it's still 20% more damage than the bow that I have right now. Because the local modifiers on the bow, they're just that insane, because it scales to the bow, and then the better the bow is that you have, or the weapon that you have rather, the better all the other stuff in the skill tree and the gear that you have will scale of this. So that's why local modifiers are insane. And then if we add on, for example, like this has 20% more damage even though it's missing an entire stat. So maybe we get, for example, crit multi or something, then it already has 27% more. Which makes a big difference in damage. And then in the late game you might want something like this. So this bow, this bow has tripled elemental damage, high rolls, crit chance, attack speed, and attack speed via rare or unique enemy is nearby, which is pretty much always. And the difference between these two bows is massive. It's like 55% more damage, as you can see. So really look out for bows that have triple damage and attack speed and crit chance at least. And then the rest is just whatever has crit multi, extra projectile, or maybe even the focus mode is just added on. Like a nice extra. For the quiver, we want life, and the rest we fill up with as many damage stats as we can. We don't want any resistance here. On the quiver you get all damage. So this one has added flat lightning, crit chance, crit multi, projectile speed. As I said, like this mastery makes it so that it applies to damage too. So it's 40% more damage, or increased damage rather. And crafted 8 damage with attacks. The helmet also nothing special, just has a lot of life, resist, chaos resist, and then crafted hybrid resistance with chaos resist, so that the character has a decent amount of chaos resist. As you can see, it has 13%, which is really decent. And you can even get stuff like intelligence on here to fix for your gear. Then over here we have the body armor. It doesn't have to be Kintsugi, just it can also be like just a rare armor, whatever you can afford at the start of the league. Kintsugi is just really nice because it's really good for beginners because it makes it so that your build is a lot more forgiving because of the 30% less damage taken if you have not been hit recently. So in the case that a monster hits you, you won't even take that much damage. So you won't get one shot. Then you can just move away, heal back up, and be fine again. And then as a second option, if you just want damage, the classic chest piece, the Hiri's Aya, just the best DPS chest piece for bow builds. And gloves, we have again life, we have some resistance, and we have the crafted attack speed mod while focused. This is a mod from Betrayal. It will give you like an extra skill that you just have to press, and then you get a buff for 4 seconds that will greatly increase your attack speed. Like what I showed over here. So it goes from 9 million DPS to 10 million, really strong buff. On boots, we have a bit of space suppress, a bit of stats, quite a bit of life, a resist, movement speed, amulet, also nothing special, crit multi, resist, life, added damage, added fire damage. And on the rings, I like to use the rings to fix whatever my build doesn't have. So in here I have a lot of intelligence because my build really needed intelligence. I have accuracy. You need around 600 accuracy rating on your gear. It doesn't have to be 450 like I have here. It can just be, let's say, 300 on this ring, 300 here. You can even have accuracy on the helmet 300, or just on the quiver you can have around 300 accuracy rating, and 600 in total will be enough. So yeah, life, resist, added damage, stats. This one the same stats, elemental resistance, life. The belt. Ideally, it should be Stygian Vice because you can put a jewel in that will give you extra stats. But it could also be a heavy belt for strength or something. Yeah. Then the jewel. And for flask, we have an instant flask that removes bleeding. A diamond flask, jade, and silver flask. The important thing here is that you have the mod chance to gain a charge when you deal a critical strike and attack speed. Same on all the flask. Because this will paired with these nodes over here. Plus charge gained. And reduced charge used. And increased charges gained if you did a critical strike recently. This will greatly increase your flask uptime in boss fights. And then this one, the movement speed flask, we don't have the crit stuff on here because we just want as much movement speed as possible. So we need reduced duration, but in return we have increased effect and increased movement speed. This is the starter gear. As I said, this is really nothing special. This is all farmed in SSF. In Trade League you can easily get this gear and even get better gear. And then I've included some mid-late game gear with which uses Omniscience Amulet. And way more damage gear. I will explain this a bit more later, but it also has extra tree just for that. So you can see, and if you invest a bit into the build, the damage gets quite insane. This is again without focus and without Val haste. With this kind of setup, you can just one-shot some bosses, which I will show later too. And then lastly, we have the gems. We have Barrage, Trinity, Returning Projectile, Mirage Archer, Elemental Attacks, crit damage. Basically the same thing on Artillery Ballista. The only thing is multiple totems. Some people don't like this. I'm a big enjoyer of this because this way, even though it deals a bit less damage, you only have to press the button 3 times and you place the totems a lot quicker. So with this, you only have to press it 3 times, and without this, you would have to press it 4 times, and then you would only place 1 ballista every time, which is kind of annoying and takes a long time, especially because the ballistas are not really that tanky anymore in the late game, and they just get one shot. So with this, you can just quickly replenish your tiny army. Frenzy, a mana forged arrow setup with Cooling Strike, Anger, the damage aura, Sniper's Mark with Mark on hit, Arctic Armor, Flame Dash Second Wind Blink Arrow, then Val Haste and Haste. And then obviously we don't use Barrage for clearing. This is just for really big bosses. You don't need to use this on every map boss, just maybe for like Guardian maps or for the invitation bosses and stuff. And the only swap you have to do is you just swap Barrage with Lightning Arrow. And that's all, to be honest. And here's a mid-budget version or mid-game version of the build, which you can access through, again, through drop-downs. Mid-game gear, mid-game tree. As you can see, the damage is quite a bit higher. And there will be no showcase because this is pretty much the same character, just the gear is a bit better everywhere. There's the damage chest, there's the Hill's Truth Amulet. Now we're using Thread of Hope, we're using Cluster Jewels, we're using Line Noise Fall, and yeah. Now I want to show you the higher budget version of this build, which uses the Omniscience Amulet. Obviously this is going to be nerfed a bit in the new league, but with both, the sky is the limit, and really the more currency you invest, the more damage you will get. It's that simple. At a certain point, you will be able to skip a lot of mechanics in the bigger boss fights. For example, in this Maven fight, the main thing that makes it hard are the spheres that leave the dot areas all over the area. But at this point, my character can just DPS the boss so quickly that the spheres either don't spawn, or I can put them onto the side of the arena, which makes them despawn completely.
Behold my collection.
I will have what I want. This will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry.
Death
Stand
may
still.
will.
Why?
Resistance will be punished. Time contorts. Scurry, scurry.
My irritation is growing. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Stand still. How?
Stop resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Arrogant toy. This will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Do what I say. Stand still.
toy must enjoy.
Here's the late game version of the build, which you can access again for the drop down. You just set it to late game gear. And the tree, you also set it to the late game high budget tree. As you can see, again, quite a big damage increase. Still using the Thread of Hope and the cluster jewels. This time we're using 2 megalomaniacs instead of 1. And now we're using the crystallized omniscience amulet. If you didn't know, this amulet basically converts all your attributes that you have on your character, on the skill tree or on gear, into elemental resistance for your character and elemental penetration, so it gives damage and survivability. So then all you have to do now is to get gear that has attributes. For example, this helmet, it has double attributes. It has strength, dexterity. The rest is life, some accuracy that you will need, because you won't have, as you can see, you won't have strength or dexterity anymore, so you need to make up accuracy somewhere else, because dexterity gives accuracy. So then we have Series Ire, 45 dexterity, some damage with bow attacks. On the gloves we only have damage, aside from the maximum life. On boots we have triple stats, strength, dexterity, intelligence, life, movement speed, avoid being chilled. On the crystallized omniscience we have utmost intellect anointed, which is this node up here. It gets 40 intelligence and increases intelligence by 8%. And then of course we have down here we have the same utmost swiftness, which gives dexterity and 8% increased dexterity. Really good. On the rings we have pretty much just damage aside from life, and again 2 attributes. Here we have attributes, accuracy, and some resistances on the belt and the ring, actually, because it's really hard to carry the resistances only through the omniscience. All in all, I recommend sticking to the early and mid-game versions of the build, because the end-game version is just way too expensive and not really worth it in my opinion, unless you don't care about dying too much. Anyways, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or problems, feel free to ask. I will try to help as much as I can.